duos in the SEC going into 2025. When I break down my way too early top 25 rankings, what I try to do is I try to find duos, two people, two prospects that I think elevate your team. They're either on offensive side, defensive side. It doesn't really matter when it comes to that. They are just two guys to where you say, if you plug and play them in any other team, whether it was in Auburn, whether it was in LSU, whether it was in Columbia, South Carolina, Norman, Oklahoma, they would guarantee you 3 more wins. That's how much I believe in them. That's how much I believe they can turn the corner. That's how highly I regard them. So I got my top 5 going into next year. Real quickly, honorable mentions. Vanderbilt quarterback Diego Pavia and Eli Stowers. Auburn wide receiver Cam Coleman and Kendrick Falk. Alabama wide receiver Ryan Williams and LT Overton at defensive tackle. And Texas A&M linebacker Torian York and Cassius Howell at defensive end. Number 5, I got Ole Miss's Caden Lee and linebacker Surtain Perkins. Lee was one of the most slept on wide receivers in college football last year, and certainly in the SEC, because all of us were so fixated on what Jordan Watkins can do and what we thought Juice Wells was going to be. And then Trey Harris is off to such a hot start before he gets injured. And slowly, I bet you didn't know this, but Caden Lee finished top 10 last year in every single receiving category among SEC wide receivers. Top 10 in catches with 57. Number 10 in receiving yards with 874. Number 5 in yards per catch at 15.3, and 7th in yards per game at 86.6. When Jackson Dart needed a big-time play in the Florida game or in the Mississippi State game or especially in the Duke game, in the Gator Bowl, 19 was making plays, and that's going to do wonders when it comes to fitting in that role for Austin Simmons next year. He's one of those playmakers that you say, he would be a wide receiver 2 for most teams, but if you put him as a wide receiver 1, we are very confident in what his skill set is, what his potential can be, what his upside is. He may end up leading our team in receiving yards. And he's very well going to do that next year, I think, down at Oxford. And then you bring in Perkins. Perkins, again, rotational guy that understood his assignment in the defense headline by Pete Golding Jr. Number 3 in sacks in the SEC with 10.5. Number 4 in the SEC in tackles for losses with 14. Number 3 among linebackers in quarterback hits, pressures, and win ratio, according to Pro Football Focus. Also had 3 pass breakups. And he averaged somewhere like around 6.2 tackles per game. He had multiple games last season where it was over, where he had over 10 tackles per stop. So he is the enforcer of your defense moving forward. He is the guy that you say, you know what? We know that if we get him flying around the football field, he's going to make plays. We are salivating at the mouth to be able to watch him play in Vaught Hemingway Stadium next year. I don't understand why people are doubting Ole Miss. They still have some very good talent. They've added in a lot of pieces in the portal. They did a good job of stabilizing themselves to where maybe they aren't going to have that same type of mentality where it's win or bust because of what we lost, but we still feel really, really good about where we are as a program. Number 4, but that was number 5. Number 4, Tennessee quarterback Nico Iamaleava and defensive back Jermod McCoy. It's another year in Heupel's system that should do wonders for a team that was in the college football playoff. By the season's end, if you go back and you look, Nico actually had figured things out. He wasn't overshooting wide receivers. He wasn't playing under duress. He was getting rid of the ball in a timely manner. He actually was one of the better and more efficient quarterbacks over the last 5 games following the Alabama win in the 3rd Saturday in October. The problem is Tennessee just never played a 4-quarter game. Whether it was the inconsistency with the pass protection, wide receivers dropping balls left and right. There were a few turnovers from Nico. The running ability on 3rd down really struggled. So we kind of threw Nico to the wayside last season. But it's Josh Heupel's system. You got to see him take another step forward. You got to see him be able to kind of embrace who he is. And I don't have any doubts about Nico. I still believe that he could be one of the best quarterbacks in college football. In my way too early quarterback rankings, I had him 6th. And this is a guy that didn't finish with 3,000 passing yards. He barely finished with 3,000 total yards of offense last year. So I have my reserves when it comes to Tennessee, but I don't have my reserves when it comes to Nico. You put him in certain systems, very similar to the one that he's running in Josh Heupel's, he's probably a 10-win team quarterback, and he's probably over a 3,300 passing quarterback, and he probably has 30 touchdowns, and he probably also has a few turnovers, better wide receiver play. There's a lot of reserves that go into what went wrong in Knoxville this past season offensively. But then you bring in Jermod McCoy. And Jermod McCoy, for my money, was probably one of the more quality overall welcomed additions in the SEC. Was a stud at Oregon State for a year, then comes on in and immediately locks down the left side of the field. Took a defense that ranked 64th in pass coverage, allowing over 220 yards per game, to 29th, less than 190 yards per pass. 13 pass deflections this season were the most by Evolve's defensive back since 2001. It also was number 2 in the SEC, and he also led the conference with 4 interceptions, which was the most since 2019 by Evolve's defender. 3 of his 4 picks also came from inside Tennessee's 3-yard line, which meant that he was causing plays as teams were trying to score. And more importantly, his 90.3 coverage grade by Pro Football Focus ranked 2nd in the SEC and 5th among all cornerbacks. So this is now your go-to guy. This is now your favorite guy. This is now your top moment. This is the dude that you think at this point is going to turn the corner and be an enforcer in the secondary. I absolutely love everything about what Jermon McCoy does. I absolutely love everything that Jermon McCoy brings to the table. I absolutely believe that Jermon McCoy can be one of those playmakers that comes out, starts swinging. And now he's going to have to because of what you're losing inside of the front 7, what you're losing on the defensive line. Tim Banks has himself a stud on the back end. Number 3. LSU quarterback Aaron Nussmeier and linebacker Whit Weeks. So Nuss was an inside the dark roller coaster. And one of you who have been on one of these before, you get what I'm saying. You have no idea what term is coming next. The corkscrews, the twists, the turns, the drops. You're just kind of along for the ride. And when Garrett Nussmeier is playing his version of football that we were envisioning when he came on out of high school, especially being a son of Doug Nussmeier, he was point. He was on point. There was a reason why many people said this guy could win a Heisman Trophy. He eventually could be a number 1 overall pick. He could be one of the best in college football. And you saw it on display. The Texas Bowl, if you're a Tiger fan, has got to give you so much hope and joy and praise and accolades to say, you know what? This is someone that we believe in next year. But unfortunately, you also had the bad, the twists, the turns. Bad performance against Alabama. Very rocky performance against USC. Kind of an up and down performance against Florida. There was a lot of moments this past year where you're saying, that's the reason why he couldn't beat out Jaden Daniels. And let's be real, nobody was beating out Jaden Daniels to begin with. But he's one of 6 passers to finish last season with over 4,000 yards. He's the only passer returning with over 4,000 yards. He's one of 10 players to finish with over 30 touchdowns last season. He's one of 3 players returning with 30 touchdowns this season. It's a much more stable receiving corps. Look at what you're losing. No more CJ Daniels. No more Kyron Lacey. You still have Aaron Anderson. You still have Chris Hilton. You still have Xavier Thomas. You're bringing in Nick Anderson, who was a freshman All-American, and Barry Brown that is known for pure straight line speed. That is something that you can hold your hat on. And while you lost Mason Taylor, you still have 2 quality tight ends. Your offensive line is going to take a step back, but by how much? Love the additions of what they've been able to bring in. Josh Thompson was an all Big Ten interior offensive lineman. Now he's playing down in Death Valley. That's a dude that's going to be creating avenues for Caden Durham in the run game and making sure that you stay upright. You have enough to say it's another year in Joe Sloan's system. It's another year of confidence to be able to improve. And as long as I continue to make the right plays and the right reads, I'm in a very, very, very good spot moving forward. And then you go talk about Whit Weeks, Honky Badger. Finished 2nd in the SEC in tackles with 122. He was top 20 in tackles for losses with 10. He had 3.5 sacks last year. Constant playmaker. When Harold Perkins went down, somebody had to step on up. That was number 40. Whit Weeks was flying all over the football field. He is now the general of this defense moving forward. Blake Baker has a certain standard that you're trying to hold attached to. What you're looking for is exactly what a guy like Whit Weeks brings. Either he is going to be phenomenal in 2025. More importantly, he is going to be a reason why we were talking about the Tigers making a college football playoff run. SEC Unfiltered is proudly partnered with FanDuel. For the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel takes the NFL playoffs to the next level. And right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's $300 in bonus bets if you win with your first $5 bet. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need, from live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. What's not to love? Just visit FanDuel.com/SECU to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/SECU. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Must be 21 and older or present in select states for Kansas in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 and older and present in D.C. First online real money wager only. $5 deposit required. A bonus issue with non-withdrawable bonus bets which expire 7 days after the receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Okay, back to the show. Number two. Now, number two and number one, I'm going to be completely real. You can interchange these, and I completely understand it. But for my money, it is a little different. For my money, there's one small caveat that I had to throw in here. So number two is South Carolina quarterback Lenore Sellers and defensive end Dylan Stewart. There was no one more improved from week 1 to week 0. From week 1 to week 14 than Lenore Sellers. Kid was everywhere. Go back and remember that performance against Old Dominion. And then remember what he did against Clemson in the Palmetto Bowl. He's a perfect fit for Mike Shula's system. He was making plays left and right that literally weren't just jaw-dropping. They were unheralded. They were unknown, unbeknownst to me. And that's the big thing, is that you remember when you were a kid and watching Johnny Manziel play and watching Cam Newton play and watching Vince Young play, and you're saying, that's impossible to do. Well, it isn't for number 16 from Florence, South Carolina. Made it absolutely look easy. 3 touchdowns in the game against Clemson to guarantee a spot at least with 9 wins this past year. And I'm not saying that there weren't some lulls, but you know what? For a redshirt freshman, you'll take the lulls as long as the growth continues as soon as the season comes to an end. And by the way, Mike Shula, I refuse to say that Cam Newton and Lenore Sellers are the same player or even close to the same player. But I will say that if there is one person that can get more versions of that number 2 out of number 16, it is Mike Shula. Because when he won the MVP for the Carolina Panthers, guess who was his offense coordinator? So it makes perfect sense. Finished with over 3,000 scrimmage yards last year, 25 touchdowns, and 4 wins over ranked opponents. And then you throw in Dylan Stewart, who, because of what you had with Kyle Kennard on the opposing side, got to get comfortable, got to get really in motion for Clayton White's system, and eventually played with confidence. And by the season's end, he was looking like more so a 4-year All-American than he was a freshman coming out of high school. Finished the season with 6.5 sacks, 10 tackles for losses, second among SEC freshmen in quarterback hits, pressures, tied with the guy who's at number 1 in forced fumbles. This is somebody that is now the anchor of your defense. It's somebody that when you go into recruiting visits and you step inside a household, you say, look at what we did with Dylan Stewart. Look at how well he played as a freshman. That can be you. And by the way, he's only going to get better. He's an All-American for my money. He's a potential first-round pick. He is the top recruit defensively to come through the building since Jadeveon Clowney. And he might have a little bit more upside and juice than what you have with Jadeveon Clowney. So I really like what he brings to the table moving into 2025. That's number 2. Number 1, and it's, again, by the hair of your chin. If you want to flip them, by all means, so be it. I don't really argue with you on that. It's Arch Manning and it's Colin Simmons from Texas. It's year 3 for Arch in the system. And he's impressed everyone in the building. He's impressed everyone that has been around the block. Those who have barely seen him play still say, Arch, he's good. We know what he's going to be. And here's how you know that, because of literally you have one of the best passers to come through Austin since 2009. And you say to yourself, we need to go ahead and play Arch Manning. That was what Quinn listened to for the last 2 years. Finished the season with 13 total touchdowns against 2 interceptions, several throws that were off point, several throws that were a little bit too wide. One of the interceptions, god awful. But you know what that is? That's correctability. It's getting your feet wet. It's like basically seeing the preview for a movie, then going in and having your mind blown afterwards. You understand so much of what he does can be fixed overnight. And now he's locked into his QB1, so there's no more question about, hey, what's it going to be like? Am I running certain design plays? Am I locked in at this spot? Am I going to be here for the long? No, you're good. And he's not going anywhere. Colin Simmons was everything that Texas expected coming out of Duncanville High School. Finished first among Longhorns in sacks with 9.5, second in tackles for losses with 14.5. Only got 48 tackles as a pass rushing specialist. And I might remind you, ladies and gentlemen, I might also remind you, guy did not play more than 50% of snaps in any single game in 2024. So he was a one-down player and a one offensive assignment. Get to the backfield, win your rush, tackle the quarterback, tackle the running back. Mission accomplished, was an All-American freshman. Phenomenal first year. And now he's going to be a 3-down player. And he has lines of defense with Anthony Hill Jr., Mookie Taft coming on back in. Trey Moore's back for another season. Malik Muhammad is back for another year. You could have guaranteed to switch any one of these around and you would have been probably right. But for my money, I just had to say that right now, when I looked at currently the status of what we have with Colin Simmons and how he played, it's just slightly above. If you were to take Dylan Stewart and Arch Manning and put them together, I probably would have it at 2 and have no questions whatsoever. You took Colin Simmons and Lenore Sellers, put them at 1, I'd have no questions whatsoever.